All right, today is our first episode of One Among Us, and we're joined here by Mr. Rakerd.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being our first guest.
Oh yeah, I'm happy to be here.
So, are you familiar with the formatting of podcasts? Do you listen to many podcasts yourself, or what do you like to do when it comes to podcasts?
Yeah, actually, I like a lot of podcasts. Some I've been listening to. I actually listen to NPR a lot on the way to work, so I listen to This American Life and Politics one, but some fun ones too. I've been a fan of Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, if you've heard of that one, which I think actually has a similar format to what you're going for here. So
yeah, I've heard of that one. I've seen it around, but I don't think I've really listened to it, but I do like Conan O'Brien.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah. So now that you're familiar, I guess. So you happen to be, you are a Blaine alum, right?
Yep.
What year did you graduate?
Graduated class of 06, coming up on 13 years ago now. Geez.
And the reason why I like you having as my first guest is because obviously for your age, you're very young. And I was hoping that by interviewing you, maybe you could influence some of our young listeners and people that we have as students today and to maybe pursue them into like a career of teaching. And yeah, you also have the interesting story of being an alum. So what were your going back to high school when you think about it? So you started freshman year, 2003-ish?
2002, and then that year ended in 2003. So yeah.
So what were some of your hobbies back at that time then?
Yeah, I was always a theater kid for the most part. I actually, so both of my parents were actors, and so that was something I was always interested in. They actually put me in some commercials when I was real little, and that helped pay for part of college, so that was pretty sweet. You can't find that stuff anymore. But then I was in plays off and on, and came right in freshman year, auditioned for the fall play, which was The Frog Prince, and got a part in that. I was actually the prince before and after getting turned into a frog, so the human version. And didn't stop from there. I ended up making a bunch of friends and got into, there's a lot of overlap between the theater program and the choir program, so I joined choir about halfway through that year, and that pretty much dominated my high school experience. So it's pretty interesting that you were in some commercials as a kid. That sounds really. Do you maybe have like a VHS tape somewhere, or? I wish I could. I could ask my mom, and maybe she'd be able to track something down. But I know when I was like 2, it was like a Big Bird bingo. I had to do like a cat food commercial. I remember doing one for like trying to sell chicken when I was like 7 or 8. That was the last one that I did, but that was an interesting kind of childhood experience.
Yeah, that's really unique and interesting.
Folks trying to make money off me, No, that's not true. But
and so theater is like something you did inside of school. What was something that you did? Obviously, theater kind of consumes your day in school and outside of school because you have to kind of prep for it. But what were some other things that you like to do outside of school? If this was like 2002, 2003, did you do like PlayStation or like what other kind of things did you do?
Oh yeah, so definitely into video games if you're getting at that, which Halo was a big thing. It would have been Halo 2 in high school. There was about a year and a half where that was like mostly what we all did at parties, But it's different now. You guys, you can play online the first person shooters. I remember having parties where people would like lug over their TVs, and we'd have 4 different Xboxes just like plugged in at different rooms of the house and have like 16 people over.
So because you played Halo back in the day, are you like more of a PlayStation guy now or Xbox guy now, or
actually more of a Nintendo loyalist if it comes down to it? Been doing a lot of Super Smash Brothers lately, but that to me was always the most fun when it came to playing video games. I don't play online as much. I really like being in the room and competing with my friends, and it's kind of like a bonding activity. That's always my most fun experiences with that. That's what it's all about for me. And I feel like something's lost if you're doing it online personally, but yeah.
And let's see. So you had, I think it's kind of interesting that you guys had like 4 TV setups at the party just to play Halo. I think that's really interesting. Was there anything else that you did besides video games, or anything else that you can remember at least?
Boy Scouts was the other thing. I actually made it to Eagle Scouts, so did a lot of camping, fishing. Parents kept me busy. Although, I'll tell you, being in the theater program, that's always like my primary memories of high school going back, though. And if you're like a theater regular, we do 4 productions a year, and that's still true. There's about maybe 5 days out of the school year where you're not there after school till 5 working on something. So,
So, back to the Boy Scouts thing. Are you like an outdoorsy kind of person? Like today, you fish, camp, anything?
I do enjoy it. I wouldn't say I'm totally knowledgeable. I do go to the Boundary Waters, but I really only go because I've got like that friend who knows everything, and he does we go with a couple of friends, but he does like 75% of it. And he'll tell me, hey, go tie this to that tree and things like that. But like the actual survival and having the equipment, I'm just piggybacking off of him. So,
yeah,
I enjoy it, but I'm not like an ODA fanatic or anything.
Yeah, and that's always nice too. I wish I could have like a mentor or somebody to kind of help me out in the outdoors. Looking back on high school, is there something that keeps you up at night, like something that you would want to go back and change? Or, I mean, it could be career related. It could be, I don't know, anything that you're thinking of.
Well, there's always something. Maybe this is more going into college, I guess, more so than high school. But I wasn't fully decided on becoming a teacher until I was about a year and a half into college, actually. And I wish I knew earlier that was the path that I wanted to take. I might have focused more on some particular areas and started trying to hone those skills a little bit earlier on in life, if that makes sense.
So before deciding you wanted to be a teacher, what else were you kind of thinking of?
I did go into a theater major, and I did get that too. So I've got 2 degrees. For me, theater became something that'll always be part of my life as like a hobby, not necessarily a full-time career choice. It's a tough life. You got to be somebody who's willing to, if you want to be a professional actor, go where the work is. Even like travel around, like be a touring artist, not really be tied to one place or to one particular group of people. And I decided that wasn't what I wanted. There are actually people that are important to me and around this community that are important to me. And it's probably very telling that now I've ended up teaching pretty close to where I grew up. I didn't necessarily plan it that way, but I've got some relationships that I value and a lifestyle that I value that doesn't lend itself to acting full time, but theater still does get to be a big part of my life, and teaching's very important to me too. That's my main passion now. So,
do you think you'll ever wake up one day and decide to move to LA and do something there to be an actor, or do you ever think you might do that at all? Or
I don't think at this point, especially now. I do work part time for like a murder mystery company. That's kind of fun, and of course, I'm directing the plays here. And so it is a part of my life, and I'm pretty satisfied with that. The thought occurred to me when I was in my early 20s. As I get older, probably less and less likely. It's much more challenging to want to uproot your life and do that, and I just don't think that's for me. Like I said, that lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is kind of a struggle. You kind of move there, struggling to make ends meet because rent's obviously very expensive.
And for some people, that is what you want to, and people should go for that. But as I said, I decided over a period of time, I had other values,
Do you have any funny high school stories that you either remember or would you like to share at all? Or
trying to think of funny high school story.
If you don't have any, that's fine. We can obviously come back to it, but
yeah, I'll think about that a little bit more. It's kind of like, I don't know. You ask me to tell you a joke. If you're put on the spot, it's kind of hard to come up with one just right off the bat, but I'll think about it a little more.
So for my next question, something that really interests me is kind of looking around in this current atmosphere in high school, seeing like different clothing trends or what people like to do, like outside of school, social media, etc. What was kind of the whole high school atmosphere back then for you during the years of 2002, 2003 to 2007? Like, what did people do? What were the trends, like video games, stuff like that?
Yeah. I really can't emphasize enough, and you guys have probably heard it before, the big thing is how quickly technology has taken off, honestly. I don't feel like 12 years when I graduated is that long ago. Maybe you'd disagree with me, but
I think I would, but
it doesn't feel that long to me. But I got my first cell phone for Christmas my senior year, I think was what it was. My dad had one for the family before that. I remember he would lend it to me if I wanted to go out and have a meal with friends. He'd lend it to me so they could get a hold of me in an emergency. But I got my first one that was mine halfway through senior year, and I was fascinated that it could take photos and send text messages. And so in the period of just a decade, how much things have really taken off, and how now basically you've got the Library of Alexandria in brick form in your pocket at all times, and the amount of convenience and connectivity. Having laptops in most every classroom available for like regular use. We would have to, if we were doing something on a computer, we would like have a little mini field trip over to the computer lab to go do some word processing, and it was like an event. And that's the main thing that really feels different. I don't know. I feel like the fashion hasn't shifted that much. I feel like music hasn't shifted as much. The building still feels the same, except for, hey, there's all this new tech, all this machinery around, and it's a part of everything we do, you know?
So for like your first phone, was it like one of those Nokia phones that never breaks when you drop it, or was it like a flip phone, or which one was it? That's
exactly right. Yeah, you could throw it against a wall; it would turn out to be just fine. I'm sure that I did too.
You think you still have it somewhere?
I might probably. Like maybe I should recycle that or something.
So something that really interests me, and obviously this is kind of bordering the line of something that, could be illegal, don't worry, listeners or viewers. But something that I'm thinking about, senior pranks. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we've seen many senior pranks. I think we've seen one a couple years ago, but it was very inappropriate. What were some, was there any senior pranks when you were back in high school that were like appropriate or like funny that you thought that you can think of? Or
yeah, I might have to disappoint you there. I feel like the administration pretty well cracks down on that, I think somebody might have set up a stink bomb in a hallway. There was a student, I'll put it this way, who chose to run onto the football field during a powder puff game in a manner that was inappropriate. And but actually, the principal at the time chased him down and caught him. And by the time I remember, everybody in the stands was actually rooting for the principal. I didn't know he could move quite that fast. And that kid was asked not to return to school, I think. But other than that, not like the last day going out on a bang thing. Not really. I think most people are afraid of, oh, well, I'm not going to get to walk at graduation. It's not worth it for the joke. You know what I mean? So
like usually, I think last day for seniors, I think it ends second or third hour, and they all gather by like the lockers and they have balloons. Have you seen this before?
Yeah, like the party everybody throws at the end.
So they have like balloons, and I remember one year this kid was like on a locker rapping. Did they do that when you graduated?
Yeah, I think that was still going on. And it's I would always say, of course, everybody gets excited at the end of the year, but just as long as everybody's being safe, I think that's the main concern. Of course, people are going to be excited, but don't do anything illegal. Don't hurt people. Don't be a jerk. Just don't take it to that level, right? So
then to wrap up, talking about what you did in high school, what were some of your favorite teachers from Blaine High School?
For sure, the Pimlots. They ran the theater program then, and some current students might know Ms. Zemlin, who's the choir teacher. She was actually my teacher for 3 years as well. And I think because of that, I had them multiple years in a row all year long, and working on activities that I enjoyed. They had a very positive impact on me. I wouldn't be where I am today without their help,
Okay, so let's transition into college. So you've already talked about you kind of wanted to do theater, and then you kind of transferred into. Did you for English? Was it deciding to be an English major and maybe doing something else English related, or did you know you wanted to be a teacher?
That was something that I always suspected. Actually, I got guided toward the theater major, like I mentioned, because I wanted to continue doing plays, and that was actually something my folks said. They're like, well, if you're not a theater major, they probably won't consider you. So I'm like, well, yeah, I want to keep doing plays. But I'd always considered English as well. It's something that I always had positive experiences in English class. I like reading and writing a lot. I like talking to people about reading and writing, and I want to be able to pass that on to other people. And that was, after a little while, like I said, about a year and a half there, I went that direction. Resulted in me spending an extra year and a half at school. So I finally graduated after 5.5 years, but no regrets. I'm excited to have taken that turn.
And did you ever consider anything like a STEM major, or is that just not you as like a person?
No, not very much. Engineering and science, very valuable. It's really important that we have people like that. I guess that's just not always how my mind worked. I guess more a creative type and not quite as much of a concrete thinker in a way. Yeah.
So what would be your advice for people that are, there's kind of this big push for a lot of people to go into the STEM field because there's, you know, a lot of demand for, you know, maybe like coders and stuff like that. What would you say to people that are thinking about, let's say if they're in your seat, they want to be an English teacher, but they're also thinking about being a STEM major, kind of, you know, maybe they might not like it as much, but they know they'll like being a teacher. Mm-hmm. Like, do you think they should kind of follow their passion, or like something that makes them a lot of money, or like, do you think maybe they should balance it out, or what do you think?
I think that's tricky. I think that the traditional advice that you get is you should work a job that you love, you know, and you could pursue that, but I think it's sometimes is more complicated than that. It's more about what sort of life do you want? And I think there's something to be said for, like you said, maybe working a job that will give you enough money that you're able to meet the goals that you want. Maybe you get some benefits so that you feel comfortable and protected. And you make enough money so you can raise a family because that makes you happy, or take a lot of time off and travel the world because that makes you happy. For years, my mom worked a day job in retail selling clothes because the scheduling was somewhat flexible. So she didn't necessarily enjoy it, but that allowed her to do acting in the evenings, which she was passionate about. So sometimes there are other concerns, you know, about what you go into and what kind of a path that you pursue. But you were wondering about like STEM in particular. I mean, for the engineering, sciences, mathematics, we need you guys to be able to succeed as a society, to be able to continue to be competitive. But do make sure that it is a life that you want. Don't go into it just because you think, oh, you're going to make a whole lot of money. You should get into it for reasons of, you know, I want to contribute to the world in this way. I enjoy problem solving. I enjoy feeling needed or important. Or maybe it is that this is a way to support the life that I want, like the hobbies or being able to raise a family or to be able to travel. So whatever, there are multiple paths to get there, I think, to find fulfillment.
So, going on and adding more to college, what were some of your favorite courses that you took there?
So you'll find when you're in college, at least the first couple of years, of course, you're going to be focusing on your generals. It almost feels like an extension of high school. As you get into year 3, year 4 of your major, you start to specialize a little bit. And I ended up taking those classes a little more seriously. That's when I got into my more intensive English and education classes. And those are the ones that I really enjoyed. I had to take a class just on Shakespeare. And I took a class just on diversity in the classroom. And those really opened up my eyes to some issues and to some groups of people that I'd never really considered before. I think made me not just a better teacher, but like a more well-rounded person. So some of those more specific courses where I was taking classes with classmates also who were pursuing a similar path to what I was doing, those are the ones that were most exciting to me, more so than like level 1 astronomy. Not to knock astronomy, but that was just checking a box, right? So getting through that first couple of years was kind of like, oh, I'm not super stoked about this, not super stoked about that, but that was still important too. Then I learned that about myself. I know definitely I'm not into geology. Some people are, but I'm not.
Yeah.
But then you get to kind of find your path and specialize and then be around other like-minded people. And that was really valuable and rewarding, you know?
And you mentioned that you took a Shakespeare course, right? This is something that definitely interests me because how many people were like honestly, like how many people were there to actually kind of learn about Shakespeare? or how many people were kind of there to kind of like impress people? Do you think there was some kind of person that was like, because you'll like either watch like a rom-com or something, and like the guy will like quote like a Shakespeare line, but they like things like that. Like, do you think there were some of those kinds of people in there, or
and the idea of quoting Shakespeare at women and then having them fawn all over you, I'm not sure will work in reality.
Yeah, yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily recommend trying that, but no, in that class it was pretty specialized. That's what I was talking about. That was pretty well into my English major, so it was all people wanting to be teachers or literature majors, so they were taking it pretty seriously. And it was a Shakespeare adaptation course, which was kind of interesting. So we didn't just read Shakespeare, we were also looking at other pieces that have been inspired by Shakespeare. Like we had to read a novel called 1,000 Acres that was inspired by King Lear, for instance. So that was a pretty fun class.
So for like Shakespeare, they use, what was it? Iambic, how do you pronounce it?
Iambic pentameter, yeah.
So is that what makes it? So I think you mentioned in class that that's what kind of makes it hard to understand, and even people back at that time wouldn't even, kind of speak that way. Is that true?
Well, yeah, the iambic pentameter, it is a poetic rhythm. Sonnets are written in that way, and it is that kind of, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? And if you say that out loud, it's da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It's just like a stylistic form of writing, and so obviously they had to write the words to be able to fit into that meter. So no, it's not necessarily how people would actually speak, but it makes it very distinctive, and it was considered, I guess, a formal style at the time. We don't really do that anymore, but that's how plays were pretty much done.
So were you in that class, were you kind of struggling to kind of read Shakespeare, or... Mm-hmm.
I even now struggle to read Shakespeare. You and I had the class together. We went through Othello, and I've got a pretty good understanding of it, but I've also read it like 15, 20 times now, you know? And I notice new things every time I go through it. But that's kind of what's fun for me. I find that when I do reread Shakespeare the first time through, it takes me a long time to even figure out what the heck's going on. And then when I have a sense of the story, I go back through and like, oh, that's what they're saying. That's what they mean. Oh, they're foreshadowing that. Oh, that's what this character really means at this part. So... You notice that it's complex, and you learn new things about it every time, and it takes patience, but I've developed a taste for it, and maybe some other people will over time too.
So not to sound like, I guess you could say like uncultured or whatnot, but is that what draws people to Shakespeare, is the fact, because when you think about Romeo and Juliet, we know what happens in the end, but is that why people are drawn to Shakespeare? Because they notice new things, or what's like the whole world's fascination with Shakespeare to a person who like average Joe, I guess? Yeah,
I think that's part of it, is that everybody can kind of derive different meaning of it. People are continuing to debate, oh, what was meant by this? Why does this person do this? There's a lot of different ways that you could interpret it. I think also the themes are so timeless too. Romeo and Juliet being the example, the idea of timeless love, trying to conquer all, the devastation that comes from not being able to get all of the things that you want. In that case, not being able to be with the person that you want to be because of outside factors. These are things that still resonate and that people are still dealing with today, and that was something that was written 400 years ago. Yeah. It's kind of neat to know that people from the past, it feels like a totally removed culture, but they were feeling and dealing with a lot of the same things that we were. They're not as different as we think that they are.
And then because you've been through the whole process, let's just say we have a listener or a viewer who wants to become an English teacher or just a teacher in general. What is some advice that you have for them? Things to do in college, internship. Well, I don't know if there's an internship for teaching. Maybe there is, volunteering, stuff like that. Like, what is your advice for those people who want to pursue something teaching related?
Well, for teaching related, there's a lot more that goes into teaching than just being interested in your subject. And that was something that I learned. You really do have to become a student of how people are, one of my former coworkers called it that. He said he was a student of human nature. So you have to be you have to have an interest in people. You have to be willing to collaborate, to form relationships, to figure out how each individual student learns and what they need in order to be successful in the classroom. And so that, I think, takes a particular type of person, and it's what makes the job so rewarding and also challenging, to be the sort of person who's willing to take an interest in who your students are as people, to try to connect the material to them. And so just try to surround yourselves with a lot of different types of people. Be outgoing, try to be out adventurous, meet as many people as possible, and try to become that kind of citizen in the world, somebody who wants to connect with and talk with other people. And I think that'll make you a better teacher in the long run if you work on those kind of interpersonal skills.
So you mentioned that, what did you say specifically, that you were a student of human nature?
Human nature. That was my former colleague's words, not mine. But
so during that process in college, did you ever have to take a child psychology class, or just any kind of, I know you have to take general psychology, obviously, for a lot of bachelor degrees, but do you have to do anything specific for psychology for teaching, or no? I
do have an interesting thing. So yeah, a lot of different classes, but I actually took a class in interpersonal communication, which, if you don't know what that means, that's what I was just talking about. Communicating with others, basically. And boy, that was an interesting class. One of my assignments was, our professor told us to go out in the world and invade somebody's space and see how they react. If you go into the library, I think this is what I ended up doing. Go into the library, and there's a lot of options for where to sit down.
Yeah.
And sit right at the table, right across from them. Or sit right next to somebody at the desk next to them in the classroom, or sit next to someone on the bus when you don't have to.
Yeah.
And invade their space. And you should try it sometime. Not inappropriate. Don't touch them or anything.
Yeah.
But if you sit next to somebody, they're like, I bet they don't say anything. Because they will get visibly uncomfortable, you're in your bubble, but it's not quite breaking the rules. So they're probably just going to get real quiet and maybe stiffen up a bit, but then just deal with it. And then sure enough, that's what happened. I sat right next to someone in the library when there were plenty of options for seating, and just went about my business like it was no big deal. And yeah, they just kind of bristled a little bit and then just kind of tried to ignore me and then walked away about 5 minutes later. But so that was an example of this sort of things, just kind of figuring out how people work and human nature. That was kind of a fun exercise.
So, going off teaching, do you ever think that, because I don't know how the different qualifications work, do you think you could ever go down to middle school or elementary school to teach, or do you think you would just stay at high school? My
license right now is 5th through 12th grade English, so I couldn't go teach math, and I couldn't go teach elementary without getting another licensure. So that's the reality of it there. I'm licensed 5 through 12. To answer your question, I'm pretty happy at the high school level. I don't have plans to leave Blaine anytime soon. I have taught middle school as well, and I really enjoy that too. I think that is a time in a person's life when you're still kind of trying to figure out the type of adult you're going to be. You're a little older than being a kid, but you're not quite high school age adolescence, and so that's a time that you can make a real impact and can get kids still really excited about school. So I enjoyed that, but I also enjoy teaching seniors right now, because I think you can talk to them like they're adults and be a little more real with them, and I find that to be a little more of a relaxing day. So there's pros and cons to both.
Okay. So something else that I wanted to mention was, I talked to Nathan in our class. I'm not going to say his last name, whatever.
I think I know who you mean.
He mentioned that you were in a circus. Could you explain more on that, or is it really a circus, or what is it?
I don't know what that's referring to be honest. So. I think it's referring to the traveling dinner.
Yeah.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay.
He said circus. I'm not trying to offend you or anything, but
it's not a circus, but maybe the signals got mixed up. I think maybe what he's referring to is the murder mystery company that I work for. So that's actually the traveling part is, I guess, what's similar to a circus. Sometimes it has me going to outlying areas. I was actually at Larimore, North Dakota this last weekend, which is about 5 hours away, entertaining for a private party there. But it's Yeah, it's just an interactive murder mystery dinner theater. I usually play the detective, and suspects are in the audience, and they all have to play roles, and everybody works together. Think of it kind of like an escape room in a way. They work as teams to try to figure out who the killer is before the end of the night, and it's a real fun time. I don't know what the circus part is, but that's my best guess.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
That's all right.
So obviously very involved in theater. What is your current position in this school's theater department? What do you do? Things like that for somebody who doesn't know you.
Yeah, so I'm one of the directors. We have also one of the other teachers here, and she and I share duties. We took it over about a year ago now. So we're kind of alternating right now, where I direct shows and sometimes she directs shows, and she's more knowledgeable in tech than I am, although I'm trying to learn those things. But we run the show. We direct about 4 productions a year, and I couldn't be happier about it. That's something I've actually wanted to do. Well, I've already talked plenty about my theater interests, so that's been something I've been wanting to do my whole career up to now. So I'm really happy to be able to have the privilege.
And did you do theater in the middle school that you worked at, or?
Not as much. So they didn't have a theater program at my previous school, is the basic answer. I did work I have produced my own shows through the Minnesota Fringe Festival before, and I worked at a theater camp over the summer, so that was kind of my previous experience, but not at my previous school, no.
So, being Mr. Rakerd, you know, doing day-to-day things, what are some of your inspirations that you is it certain people, actors, characters, celebrities, could be anything. What are some of your inspirations?
Creatively. Getting back to, I've got a lot of my theater education from, like I said, the Pimlots, the teachers that were here when I was, from some of my professors at UMD, other directors that I've had. Every theater production is an education in its own way, even if it's a bad one. Probably my mom and my dad are my biggest influences, though, and my dad especially. I get told how often we resemble each other, and probably have accidentally adopted his style of acting too. So,
let's see. This podcast is about 32 minutes. We're gonna wrap this thing up shortly.
All right.
Just a couple more random questions. If you had a free day to go anywhere in any place in the metro, where would you go?
Oh, just in the metro?
Yeah.
I really like maybe the Loring Park area. That's really kind of nice to walk around.
What city is that in?
That's in Minneapolis. I like a lot of downtown, though. I'm kind of a city guy.
Yeah, it definitely interests me too. I think like St. Paul, and I don't know, it's pretty. Let's see. And what is your most, if you want to share, what is the most embarrassing moment in your life that you can remember? It could be high school, it could be, whatever.
Well, I got a good one for this. Went out with some friends. I think I was in high school. We went to the Wabasha Caves. They do swing dancing on Wednesday nights. I don't know if maybe some of you guys know about that. We went with a group of friends, and one friend was feeling a little bit down in the dumps. I think his girlfriend had just dumped him or something like that. And he had really long, almost shoulder-length hair. I remember that. That's kind of important for the story. So we were there, and, we were dancing. We're having a good time, but I noticed my friend, he's kind of just sitting off at a table, like by himself, looking a little forlorn. His back is to me, so I decided to be a good friend and go over there and, like, comfort him. So I went up to him. I think I put my hands on his shoulders and was, like, even rubbing his shoulders a little bit, like, going to be like, hey, it's okay, man, it's cool. And the person turned around, and it was not my friend. In fact, it was a strange woman who looked utterly terrified. And I immediately withdrew my hands, like, oh, I'm so sorry.
Wait, how long ago was this?
I was in high school myself.
Oh
so
my God.
She understood, but I couldn't quite tell the situation. Like, I couldn't be like, I thought you were my friend, a man. But so that was uncomfortable.
Oh my God, that sounds like torture.
It was.
Okay, and for the last portion of this podcast, I have a segment called Life's Biggest Questions. I'm just gonna quick fire a bunch of random questions.
Okay.
Just discuss them, whatever. Do you believe in free will or determinism? Do you believe that we have action? We have the power over our actions, or do you think there's like an omnipotent being somewhere?
Oh, I think I just got to go with free will. I'm an optimist by nature. I'm a little worried about I don't know if someone else is making these decisions for me. They could have done a better job of it. No, I'm just kidding.
Can vegetables feel pain when we bite into them?
I think just potatoes can. I think the rest of them cannot.
Okay. Will we ever have a theory for everything?
I do have a theory for everything, but I am not sharing because I don't want to freak you out.
Okay. Do you think there are aliens out there? Life outside Earth?
I think there's gotta be. It's so big and vast. This is another teacher came walking in, and this got very deep. What do you think about the many worlds theory? Have you heard that? That everything that you could possibly imagine can and has happened somewhere in the universe. There's like a whole other universe out there, except maybe, I don't know, everything is exactly the same on the planet Earth, except maybe you're talking to a different teacher right now, and that's the only thing different.
I don't know. I mean, with the concept of infinity, that definitely seems like a good hypothesis or whatnot, but I don't know. I feel like there's way too many possible combinations. I feel like there's way too many offshoots in life that we can't kind of make into a world, I guess, and combine it with everybody else. Why do we dream?
I think that's our brain's way of processing information in a way that we don't really understand. I think a lot of our dreams are coming from experiences that we've had, and things make an impact on our brains that maybe we don't even consciously realize. It's kind of our mind's way of going through things. And sometimes it's hilarious and sometimes it's terrifying.
Do you think it ever predicts the future?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I hope not. My my father's head turned into an alligator head, and he chased me around the house one time. I'd rather that didn't come true.
Is time travel possible?
I think so. There's so much that we don't understand, right?
Yeah.
Who could have imagined smartphones 50 years ago?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Maybe.
And for the last and final question, probably the biggest debatable question out there, is the Earth flat?
It is not.
Why? How so?
If it were flat, cats would push everything off of the edge of it.
Okay. All right. Well, that was episode 1 with Mr. Rakerd. Do you have any ending remarks or anything you would like to say? Anything you would like to promote?
All right. Well, if this is going on the air soon, The Wizard of Oz at Blaine High School, May 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Thanks for having me on, Elvedin. This was a lot of fun. This was definitely different, and I wish you all the success. I hope you do more of these.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.